Intermedia is located in some building that is not the major building of the uni. It's a bit outside. It gives a special sort of autonomy, I would say. We're together with the library, main library of the uni, and it's very nice to have special premises that are made for exhibitions, performances, activities of different kinds, and meetings. Because it's very experimental department, Intermedia actually equals to contemporary art expressed through variety of media, different media appearances, activities of different kinds, performances. So we try to be in between medias. We have access to all the necessary equipment in the department, but we also collaborate with different departments at the uni, which is, I suppose, important. We also have lots of internships and partnerships and collaborations with external partners. And we work quite much constantly in a landscape of changing contemporary art. It's also transgenerational teachers, and our special guest teachers are coming from different generations, and we try to locate ourselves in this big discourse of what contemporary art is actually. So we raised lots of questions, I would say. We have lots of talks, and through talks and different works, both individual works and team works, we kind of answered the question where the borders of art are nowadays. And those are very different, of course. We also talk a lot about the theory, about philosophy. We have lots of background in human studies. So students usually come to us to discuss things, and it's very consultation based. Intermedia then equals to contemporary art made now for now. It's context related, so it's very important to understand these contexts in contemporary art and in the world in general. It's very site specific quite often, so you work on very different levels with different genres of art. It's contentful, meaningful. We try to create meanings by doing exhibitions, presentations of different kinds. As I said before, it's transgenerational, transmedia. These are things in arts that are between or beyond definitions. I'll come back to this one. We're very open to different things that change in society, especially, and in culture nowadays. So it's human and society oriented as much as we can. And art making in our case, it's related with the knowledge of contemporary theory discourse and how to make your art public. And this is very important, especially for people who'd like to see themselves later on in the circle of art world. And there are many, many different art worlds nowadays, especially in the year 2023. We can say that there is no one art world. There are many different examples and different circles, genres, and types of thinking about it. As the person who coined this term Intermedia said, there are many question marks. So here in this graph, original graph by Dick Higgins, who made this term, you can see lots of different things: conceptual art, performance art, dance theater, action, object, poetry, sound poetry, cinema, and performance. And there are also these question marks that we quite much refer to, because there are many things in contemporary art that are yet undefined. So we also talk a lot about the languages of art. And we have two options in Intermedia department. One is simply called Intermedia, that equals to contemporary art, art, media, society, context, and display. About context, I talked a lot before. Displays how you present your art. So how many different ways of displaying art can be. We usually talk about it, and we try to help you and advise you as teachers, as your advisors, how to prepare exhibitions, how to prepare certain acts, events, including those that are outdoor or in some partnership locations. And the other options that we have is to make experimental film particularly. So it's about filmmaking, new media, so-called augmented cinema, video installations, how cinematic image works with contemporary art display. So it's a lot about practice in filmmaking and its critique. And then each studio, we have 8 studios. I'll tell you about the studios in a second. Each studio is a team of people or autonomous program created like a masterclass by its leader or leaders. So there's certain tradition behind each of the studio at Intermedia department, and it's years of experience and practice of the person or persons who run it. Then studios implement their program based on the classes, and they are conducted classes, and some of these classes also correspond with each other. For example, in our studio, it's called Intermedia 1. I conduct classes on portfolio particularly, which is interesting from this perspective of today's meeting. And I also run classes on exhibition making, and I co-work with two other teachers. One is responsible for visual art in general. It's Professor Piotr Kurka, and the other teacher, Iza Sitarska, is responsible for performative art. So we kind of shared our different competences and skills to create long-term programs for the full academic year that end with an exhibition. And these are the studios. You can see that they are very simply named. At Intermedia option, you have Intermedia 1, 2, 3, and 4 studio. At the experimental film, you have 1, 2, 3, and 4 experimental film studio. And these are connected with the classes we run. So in the first studio, you can read here, it's Intermedia and photography, exhibitions and events. Then there is another one. These classes are called Space and Media Transformation, Knowledge of Matter. There is video and activities in public space. So those correspond very much with what the teachers as experts and professionals in their matters do. And then Studio Intermedia 4 is an art research and audio sphere. Then in the film section, we have performative and film activities. We have transmedia spaces and augmented cinema. We have animated film in relationship or in context to art making and art display, because that differs from the Department of Animation. And we also have art of cinematography run by filmmaker and artist Ania Konik. And I'll also share some links with our graduates, because I think it could be very interesting for you to see the graduates of Intermedia Department and what they do. They're not necessarily only individual artists, they are also cinematographers, art directors, some of them are curators. So to specify what you can do after Intermedia Department studies, it's a lot of different things, including set design as well. So Intermedia means a lot of things that happen in between as well, which is, I suppose, quite important to name this way. And then let's go back a little bit more maybe about Intermedia and how we work in the department. Quite often it's related to field trips, so the workshops and classes do not only happen inside the buildings, but we try to travel as much as possible, as we believe that nowadays in the world it's quite important to be able to navigate in between different ways, in between different understandings of what art is, what visual culture is in general, and that means knowing how to communicate with people coming from different backgrounds, different countries, different ethnicities, and different approaches for sure. So we quite often work on international teamworks. We have lots of journeys in our program. We have long distance collabs. Recent one is with Indonesia, for example. We have lots of international partners and networks in EU and beyond. Then, as I said before, it's about art making and how to make your art public. And there are many different forms and ways. So exhibition and events, portfolio making and portfolio reviews. We quite often invite guests who are professionals in their matters who come to see portfolios and works and exhibitions of our students and to give them feedback from their own point of views. We work and collaborate with galleries, institutions, festivals, and we make lots of study visits. This is more or less the network that we currently have. As you see, it's quite international, so I refer to this map. But these trips, field trips, study trips, are sometimes organized to places as unique as Rügen Island in Germany, to talk about history of painting and how it relates to cinema, for example, and also Venice Biennale, because we have to be very aware what the art world is now, not only through trends and modes, but rather how different and sort of interdisciplinary it is. So there's lots of, as I said before, collabs. This is a collab with UCL University London, with Slade School of Art. That was a trip that we organized through Erasmus channels at the border of Poland, Czech, and Germany. It started and originated in London, and there were lots of different things that happened in this long-term process with workshops, performances, different activities. And I think this is very maybe easy to understand that this really is international in that sense that I mentioned before. Lots of projects end with exhibitions. So we have some partnership locations, we have galleries, we have some special studios, we have workshops, we have also partners that are in festivals, music, film festivals, and they do lots of works. As you see, works of students are mostly interdisciplinary, so sometimes they come, as this one here shown, come from typographic background with something that is content related and is strongly about the meaning it creates. So sometimes it's poetry, sometimes it's augmented cinema, sometimes it's something retro, as these videos here. And yet we, again, meet, talk, discuss, go somewhere, sometimes to, as you see, quite far away, non-institutional places. And then yet we come back and work in teams on exhibitions, on specific locations. Even when something hits us as the pandemic, something global, we try to work still, and we never stop working in this department with all these circles of people. And we try to also navigate a little bit in between, also not to make such divisions between students and teachers, like for example doing bike trips, as you see here, when we talk about the history of landscape and different arts, and then we try to use it for the benefit of something that will again end up with public event. So working on some issues, themes, some categories, some philosophies, some important departing points, and then making art of it somehow, and then exhibiting it or showing it to public would be what Intermedia does. And some more pictures from partnership locations. One of them is the culture center named the Castle in Poznan, with which we have been working for several years. As you see, they have historic premises in which sometimes we show art exhibitions as well as more modern studios. So we usually collaborate on exhibitions that are our diploma student works or some graduation shows of different kinds, and then also site-specific locations, including, as here on the photo, some secret places, an underground place in which some art, as site-specific, so-called, can be shown in a very unique way. So these would be methodologies of working at the Intermedia department. I'm so sorry that I have to be quick because I would probably refer to each of these photos. You see that it's very multimedia, so it's not only new media though, but it's really different approaches that is using the variety of media to express from objects through different video, filmmaking, big installations, sometimes also having locations that need to be put on a map. Like in this case, we made an exhibition that had something like 17 locations all around the city, and you as viewers, as public, were receiving a map that you can follow and kind of link these locations and what was shown there in between. So these things, again, Intermedia equals to interdisciplinary and various medias. As you see here, it could be from poster through fashion, some sort of installation using video and photographic layouts combined. That's quite often how we work. Sometimes also combined with performance. This is a performance of our Dublin-based student, Dylan, who worked a lot himself with music. So there's some music and performance combined in an art gallery. And I think it's quite an interesting example. During the pandemic, we used the time given in a very specific way of visiting a gallery that must have been in previously signed groups, where you could simply be able to also connect with the artist in person, with some performances happening live, and simply also exhibition as a tool, as some sort of meeting point, a place where people gather, can talk about what happens outside the gallery. So it's not only about the gallery itself. We are also open to many important issues nowadays, I would believe, and those can end up in performative way in different activities and workshops, but also in a gallery display. So we teach as well, this is what we believe we can teach nowadays in contemporary art, how to organize these things, how to organize exhibitions, how to display it well, how to work with institutions outside of the university, right? And how to create a specific atmosphere, specific climate for conversations, how to augment audiences in contemporary art. So contemporary art is not something that people are afraid of, because quite often this is the case where people say that, oh, they don't go to galleries, right? If you don't belong to some art circles, you don't go there, or you're afraid. And we're trying to change it as well. In recent times, just to give you another example, we work with Polish Dance Theater here in Poznan on an exhibition that was based in the structure of drama, where an exhibition was the ground floor first act, and then people were entering the theater, the grand studio, in which there were some cinematic things happening, some public readings, and some installations that you can also see here that were audio-based. So lots of things that correspond with each other, and also how to make art being usable, being something that is a departure point for talks, for conversations about the world and what happens to us nowadays. And as Piotr was also saying, during the pandemic, we had to use different media. So it was Intermedia through international co-working. This is what Indonesian University in Bandung, Java, for example. So that would be some brief information about Intermedia. As I promised, I was trying to be short. I also share some more links here on the chat that could be useful for you. Maybe you can see the partners of our department again. So here's some more. Yep, there's also an interesting series of links with exhibitions you might be able to have a look. I'll also share, because as I don't have particularly a portfolio that is sent to Intermedia, we're still waiting for you guys, from Italy. And their portfolio is something I personally adore. It's a sort of interactive PDF with lots of text, which displays the background, what is important in their art. Then through different slides, you can have a look of how they work. For example, they work on something quite interesting called performance lectures. So they gather people in auditoriums. This is very much Intermedia art, by the way, because they have a combination of experience design, designing for the audience, including music. Those two people from Collective are DJs by heart and by core, but they also refer to many examples of social studies, cultural studies. So they use typography and they display them on the screens, and they also display different examples of self-made videos together. So it's very beautiful work. And then through the portfolio, you can see the process of making art, and it's related to architecture, quite often to light, as you see here. And then if you're interested in reading something more, then you can click and go to another site that will open like another chapter of a story. So this is very Intermedia, I would say, in the way of even preparing the portfolio itself. So the portfolio is something like a knowledge-based, data-based stream that opens lots of windows somehow, right? And yeah, you can have a look. It's a very interesting way of doing a portfolio, in my opinion. It's very Intermedia. So if you want, you can also share the portfolios with me, myself, or my colleague